Sully, when it comes to the NFL draft, people love talking about draft busts all the time. We're not doing that today. We're doing the opposite of that. Literally looking at the 32 best players, one from each slot in the first round. And we are going to go straight down the draft order and pick the best player ever that has been drafted in that slot. And if my explanation sounded confusing, let's do it. Let's start off with the number 1 overall pick. Who is the best player to ever be taken number 1 overall? Here's a few options: Peyton Manning, John Elway, Bruce Smith, Terry Bradshaw, Chuck Bednarik. And you don't even those are just some options. You don't have to name any of them. Give me what you got.
I think I would go Peyton Manning here. I think that's to me, it seems like the clear-cut answer. Obviously, no disrespect to John Elway.
Not O.J. Simpson?
No, not O.J. Simpson. I don't think, I don't think that one really makes the cut. But Peyton Manning, to me, he reminds me of kind of like LeBron James in the sense that there was so much hype with him. And you almost think that, like you were just saying, all these drafts are always busts. It's never going to work out. He's somebody that came into the league and lived up to the hype. He is someone who is established himself as one of the top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not the top 3 greatest quarterbacks of all time, multiple times Super Bowl champion, a ton of NFL records. It's weird because he played in the same era as Tom Brady that we consider the greatest of all time, but still, to me, you draft this guy being number 1 overall, hoping that he would become Peyton Manning, and he did.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy who won 5 MVPs. That doesn't get any better than that. You're the best player in the NFL for 5 years, if not more than that. You just didn't win MVP every year. 2-time Super Bowl champion, went to the Pro Bowl 14 times. His accolades are just, we could literally have a 4-hour podcast just talking about Peyton Manning's career. It was so insanely good. And then for him to kind of have that second resurgence in Denver, coming off the neck surgery, going out second year of the team, throwing 55 touchdowns and setting the NFL record for most touchdown passes in a season. That was pretty crazy to see that. And the NFL record for most passing yards in a season. So doing it at 2 stops at such a high level, I think the easy answer is Manning, unless you want to give it to 1973 number 1 overall pick, John Matuszak, who played Sloth in the Goonies. Did you know that?
I did not. I didn't know where you were going to go with that, but of course that is a nice little bonus. So we'll definitely take that into consideration.
What a crazy, that's a fun fact that a number 1 overall pick who was not known for being a number 1 overall pick, just Sloth from the Goonies. All right, let's go to the number 2 overall pick. It feels like this one could end up being a defensive player. I feel like we'll agree here. And I do agree with Peyton Manning there. All right, here's a few options. And obviously, again, you can go off the board, go totally wild card and pick whoever you want. We got Lawrence Taylor, Julius Peppers, Sid Luckman, the only franchise quarterback in Bears history, Randy White, Marshall Faulk. Who do you think is the best number 2 pick of all time?
A lot of good options here, but when you are spoken about as the greatest player on your side of the ball of all time, and in Lawrence Taylor, it's hard for me to go against that one. Like, I get it with these other, very worthwhile candidates, but you're talking about somebody who was the face of the New York Giants, the face of the NFL, one of the greatest defensive players of all time, somebody who Bill Belichick has talked about in the same breath as Brady, if not like more highly than Tom Brady. So that's the type of person that we're talking about in Lawrence Taylor, just an absolute menace. I think that if you are drafting a defensive player, you are hoping that you get half of Lawrence Taylor. And the fact that the Giants were able to use the number 2 overall pick and get him there and get that type of player is, again, just unbelievable.
Yeah, I think the Bill Belichick thing is the thing that gets me. He's the smartest defensive coach in NFL history, I think. And if he says Lawrence Taylor is the best player, best defensive player ever, then Lawrence Taylor is the best defensive player ever. And you can't really argue that. So I would also go with Lawrence Taylor. You could throw Eric Dickerson's name there. I didn't mention him. There are a bunch of options, but when we have a 2-time Super Bowl champion, and a big reason those Giants teams won was because of their defense. Lawrence Taylor went to 10 Pro Bowls, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. I think it's him, J.J. Watt, and Aaron Donald, the only 3 players in NFL history who have won. that award 3 times. So it is pretty hard to argue with that. All right, let's go to third overall. This could be the first one where we disagree, but it might not. We might just keep agreeing. We're going to find out right now. Here is a short list of guys at third overall. We have Barry Sanders. We have Cincinnati Bengals legend, super legend, Anthony Munoz. We have Larry Fitzgerald, Merlin Olsen, and Joe Thomas.
So can we guess where you're going to go? Do you want to go first on this one?
No, you got to go first. I don't want to be, I don't want to cloud your judgment. I don't want to sway you either way with my convincing argument. You go first.
To me, I like Barry Sanders, and that's more just of a personal preference. A human joystick, former MVP, led the NFL in rushing 4 times, one of the greatest running backs of all time. And to me, just one of the more exciting players. Like, this is before viral. This is before, things blowing up on the internet, certainly during his playing days, but it almost feels like anything that he did went viral. If that's weird to even say, like, he's such a dynamic and electric player to me that I would put him as if I'm drafting a running back, again, at number 3, I'm just using this as kind of my barometer. If I'm drafting a running back and he becomes Barry Sanders, massive win.
Yeah, I feel like I should go Barry Sanders and not homer it up here by taking Anthony Munoz. But Munoz is, I think when you talk to most offensive linemen, he's widely considered the greatest left tackle in NFL history, which is, we're talking about the all-important position on the offensive line, 10-time Pro Bowler, or maybe double-digit Pro Bowler, 11-time Pro Bowler, 9-time All-Pro. The man was All-Pro 9 times, which is about as high of an honor as you can get. And he did something Barry didn't do, which was get to a Super Bowl, played on 2 Super Bowl teams. So can I hand a tie vote? Can I give it to Munoz and Barry Sanders?
Yeah, you're doing the heavy lifting today because Brinson's watching the Masters, so you do what you want.
It's easier when there's 3 people here. But my tie vote means Barry wins 1.5 to 0.5. So Barry barely gets the nod there. All right, let's get to pick number 4. And look, you look at this whole list, there's great names at every number. 4th overall, Walter Payton, John Hanna, Mean Joe Green, Otto Graham, Charles Woodson. Who do you think it is?
I mean, I feel like this is the most stacked one that we've had so far, right? Like, to me, it's crazy. I will make the homer case for John Hanna. If we're doing greatest players of all time at their respective positions, yes, obviously a guard, but back in the day, that is, in his time was the greatest offensive lineman in the league and has been dubbed in some circles the greatest offensive lineman in NFL history. It's only a few years ago where the Baltimore Ravens were able to break the team single rushing record that was held by the Patriots and kind of spearheaded by John Hanna. So, to me, if we're going to go, positional greatness, if we're going to factor that in here, Hannah's probably in there as well, but producer Harry's freaking out to us in the chat there. So Otto Graham might also be in there as well.
We do not need producer Harry freaking out. We hate to see that. We hate to do that to him. I think that I am going to have to go with Walter Payton. Look, arguably the greatest running back in NFL history, and I think I was alive or even remember him playing maybe 1 season, 2 seasons. But like you said with Barry Sanders, he's that back where all these plays would have gone viral nowadays just because of how smooth he was and how well he ran. We saw him lead the NFL in rushing in 1977. We saw him win the MVP in 1977. It is hard for a running back to do that. And of course, won the Super Bowl with the 1985 Bears. So we have Tyler going with John Hanna. I'm going with Walter Payton. All right, 5th overall. We got some Deion Sanders. We got some Junior Seau, Mike Haynes, LaDainian Tomlinson, Steve Van Buren.
LT was one of my favorite players, when I was growing up, like fantasy football, absolute stud. But I don't know if I can shy away from Deion Sanders here. I mean, just you talk about iconic players in the NFL, former defensive player of the year, just an absolute stud all the way around on multiple different levels, obviously in special teams as well in the return game. So to me, I think Deion Sanders is probably the pick here.
Yeah, I feel like this is an easy one.
Yeah.
8-time Pro Bowler, won 2 Super Bowls. I mean, he was basically Darrelle Revis before Darrelle Revis was Darrelle Revis, where he just, after he left the Falcons, it was, I'm going to sign with the team that gives me the best chance to win and pays me the most money. Ended up playing with the 49ers in 94, then went to Dallas for a few years. And look, like you said, just it's hard to argue against Deion. Probably the best cornerback, best cover corner, and punt returner. I mean, he was prime time for a reason. So I think we agree on this one with Deion Sanders. All right, number 6. Woo! We got some big names here. We got Jim Brown, Sammy Baugh, Walter Jones, John Riggins. Give me some 6 overall love.
I think I go Jim Brown. Here. You're talking about one of the greatest running backs of all time, a 3-time NFL MVP. To me, it's just the amount of, the production, 1950s, 1960s all-decade team, 75th anniversary all-time team, 100th anniversary all-time team. He's in the Browns Ring of Honor. He's got his number 32 retired. And this is another one. I remember when, you would hear, Patriots going to Cleveland for games, and Bill Belichick would make it a point to have the team stop at Jim Brown's statue. Like there's such a respect for that type of a player. So to me, I would go Jim Brown.
Yeah, I think this one feels like a no-brainer. You mentioned his accolades. He played for 9 seasons. He led the NFL in rushing for 8 of those. I mean, that is mind-blowing to lead the NFL in rushing in all but one of your seasons in your career. And, the 3-time MVP that you mentioned, I think that is a solid argument in his favor. So, yeah, let's just move on because Jim Brown gets the nod. 7th overall, I feel like this is going to be up in the air. We've got Josh Allen listed here as an option, even though he's, still playing and will still be playing for a while. Adrian Peterson.
The Jacksonville
I know,
one
is
or
it
the Buffalo
Jackson?
one?
I don't know. We don't. Harry didn't specify, so we'll say either one. If you want to put Jacksonville, Josh Allen, you do it. Both. All right. Then we got Adrian Peterson, Champ Bailey, Sterling Sharp. Who do you like?
I mean, I think that there's, if we're being, honest, I think that there's probably a chance that Josh Allen gets there, but we have to see his career play out, right? Like if he goes on and wins a couple of Super Bowls, then sure. Okay. We could talk about him in this regard. It just feels a little bit too early. I feel like he's like an MVP and 2 Super Bowls short for being in this conversation. I think Adrian Peterson is someone who probably should get some love here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it probably is Adrian Peterson. You just look at what he did early in his career. The thing is, I feel like most people remember him as you look at the tail end of his career, basically from 2016 on, after his suspension, and there just is nothing. He just wasn't the same player, and that's kind of the lasting memory that people have. But when you look at his rookie year of 2007 up to 2015. I mean, he was so dominant, led the NFL in rushing 3 times, had a 2,000-yard season. So I think Adrian Peterson, and I think my wild card is a guy who was taken in 1958, and that is Hall of Famer Chuck Howley, one of the very few defensive players to win a Super Bowl MVP, 5-time All-Pro. So I would be fine with Adrian Peterson. I'm going to go Chuck Howley.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, we're going to 8th overall. We got Ronnie Lott, Lance Allworth, Jim Parker, Willie Roaf, Larry Zonka.
Ronnie Lott to me, just, I know that we talk about the 49ers with Joe Montana and everything along, Jerry Rice and those guys, but boy, Ronnie Lott, legit defensive anchor in that secondary, 4-time Super Bowl champion, 8-time first team All-Pro. He's led the league in forced fumbles and in interceptions at certain points in his career. I just think that, we're talking about somebody who was, as much as we talk about Joe Montana and all those guys in San Francisco, he's on the defensive side, someone that shouldn't be slept on.
Yeah, as someone who played on the Super Bowl, he was drafted in 1981. The 49ers made the Super Bowl his rookie year and beat the Bengals. So I should be completely bitter about that, and I am. But look, Ronnie Lott was one of the best defensive backs of his era, went to the Pro Bowl 10 times, a big reason why that defense was good and why the 49ers won 4 Super Bowls while he was on the team. Another guy I like is Mike Munchak. He was taken 8th overall 1 year later. Hall of Fame offensive lineman. So I would put him in the conversation, but I do agree with you. I think Ronnie Lott is the answer here. All right, let's go to the 9th overall pick. Man, we have a battle here. Bruce Matthews, Dick Butkus, Luke Kuechly, Brian Urlacher, Lenny Moore.
Feel like you almost have to go Dick Butkus here, or am I wrong?
You tell me.
2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time first team All-Pro. I mean, again, one of the greatest Bears of all time. I feel like I'd go Dick Butkus. Yeah, I wouldn't. I feel like I would go with that. I feel comfortable with that.
I think it's crazy that the Chicago Bears picked. Yes,
right. Is that crazy?
Use the. Wait. I'm looking right now. Was Butkus the 9th overall pick? I thought I got picked higher. I could be. Oh no, he got picked in the AFL draft 9th overall, but was 3rd overall in the NFL draft. So we can. So technically, I guess we could put him at 9th overall. But if we're only doing NFL, I feel like Bruce Matthews. If we're only doing NFL, and Butkus, hey, you get drafted by an AFL team, even if you never play for him. Does that still count?
I don't know if that counts.
Okay, we won't. I'm going Bruce Matthews then.
That's fine with me.
Or do you want to give some love to Kuechly or Urlacher?
I mean, again, great linebackers. I mean, this even without Butkus, this is a heck of a spot for linebackers at number 9 overall. But no, we can go Bruce Matthews. That's totally fine with me.
All right, let's go 10th overall. Marcus Allen, Rod Woodson, Terrell Suggs, Patrick Mahomes, Jerome Bettis.
I think this one is Patrick Mahomes. As much as I was just saying for Josh Allen, it feels like he's a couple Super Bowls away. He's still playing and all of that. This dude's already won multiple Super Bowls, gone back to back, won MVP. Like, he is establishing himself. And I wrote a story about it after they won the Super Bowl, just kind of looking at all the postseason statistics of where he already ranks. It's ahead of guys like Peyton Manning. He is rivaling the start that he's basically on track with what Tom Brady was able to do, and in many respects has been better than Tom Brady at the start of his career statistically. So he is very much on track to be the greatest quarterback of all time, but already right now, if he retired tomorrow, he would, in my mind, be considered one of the 7 best quarterbacks of all time, if not higher.
Yeah, it blows my mind that he has been the starting quarterback for 6 seasons, and the Chiefs have made it to at least the AFC title game in all 6 of those seasons. That's nuts.
It's bananas.
He's got his 3 Super Bowls, his 2 MVPs. Look, still in the middle of his career, still in the prime of his career, but I think you got to go Mahomes.
Yeah.
Ooh, number 11. Ooh, this one's juicy. We got Frank Gifford. We have Ben Roethlisberger, Paul Warfield, Michael Irvin, and J.J. Watt.
Whew, this is a good one. This, again, if you're the Minnesota Vikings, maybe you just stay pat. You're picking at number 11. Seems like you'll get some good players here at this spot. I think I lean Ben Roethlisberger because I am just putting so much emphasis on quarterback. But boy, J.J. Watt too. I mean, that is a tough one. That is a tough one. I think I lean Ben Roethlisberger. Probably one more if he was in a different era, but I think I lean Roethlisberger here. What about you?
It's tough. I mean, I could easily make the argument for J.J. Watt.
Yeah.
You could put him at number 2 on this list. You could put Frank Gifford at number 1. You could put Paul Warfield at 1. I mean, we're talking about Michael Irvin being the 5th best at this. And I think I agree with you. I'm going to go Roethlisberger. I'm not being a homer just because I went to school with him. I swear. All right. Shout out Miami of Ohio. Let's look at the 12th overall picks. We got Herb Adderley, Warren Sapp, Clay Matthews, Ali Nagata, and Marshawn Lynch.
If we're going strictly on personality, which I know we're obviously not, it's Marshawn Lynch in a landslide because he is the funniest guy that's ever stepped foot on an NFL field. He's one of my favorite characters that the NFL has ever had to offer, but we're not doing it on, how funny you are and how good of a soundbite you are. I think I go Warren Sapp here. Is that, where are you?
Yeah, I feel like Warren Sapp feels like the answer. You look at what happened after the Buccaneers drafted him in 1995. I mean, that team turned around, won a Super Bowl with them, and look, he put together a Hall of Fame career and really was the anchor of that defense for so long. And look, I think that Clay Matthews, you could certainly make an argument for him, but let's go with Seb.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, Clay. All right, who we got? We're lucky 13. Lucky 13. Oof. Aaron Donald, Bob Lilly, Tony Gonzalez, Franco Harris, and Mike Kinn are your 5 candidates, but feel free, as always, to add anyone you want.
I think I go Aaron Donald here, and maybe that's a little recency bias, but we were talking when he retired. We were talking with Brinson that this is, one of the 3 best defensive players of all time. The fact that he was able to have so much production from just a very boring sack standpoint. If you just look at sacks, the way that he was able to disrupt from the interior, and he's not an edge guy, he's an interior defensive lineman. The fact that he was able to have such an impact and did win a Super Bowl with the Rams and is considered to me to be one of the 5 best, maybe 3 best defensive players of all time. I think it's warrants him to be the best player at number 13 overall.
It's crazy because you also have Tony Gonzalez, who you could say is one of the 5 best tight ends. Franco Harris, one of the best running backs of all time. But maybe it is recency bias. Maybe it's because Aaron just retired. But I think you could even make the conversation he's one of the 2 best defensive players of all time. Put him up there with Lawrence Taylor. But I'm going to go with you here and agree that it's Aaron Donald. 14th overall, we got Jim Kelly, Gino Marchetti, Darrelle Revis, Dave Robinson, and Randy Gradishar.
And as much as I said, I put emphasis on positionals in the quarterback, and so Jim Kelly probably would be the answer there. Darrelle Revis, to me, is one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time. The fact that he was able to be so dominant in an era where it was so pass happy and the rules are so slanted towards the offense, he is just an all-world type of cornerback and was making legitimate Hall of Famers look like schoolyard boys. He is just, to me, I think it's Revis, and it's not that close, even though, again, Jim Kelly, a phenomenal quarterback.
Coming from the Patriots fan, hating on the former Bills quarterback. I am not surprised at all. I do like the Revis pick, and I could absolutely see why you go that route, but I'm going to go with Jim Kelly. Look, once he took over as the starting quarterback, you look at that K-gun offense did in Buffalo, getting to 4 Super Bowls. I don't care if they lost them all. That is nearly impossible to do. It is impossible because no one else has done it, although the Chiefs might end up doing it. But yeah, I'm going to go Kelly here just because what he did, what felt so improbable, and he ran that offense under Marv Levy so efficiently. All right, let's go to our 15th overall picks. We finally disagreed on one. That's a big one.
That's
all right,
good.
15th overall. We got Alan Page, Jim Taylor, Dennis Smith, Derek Johnson, and Delta O'Neal.
You give me yours because I'm still Googling half these names.
I'm going to go with Alan Page. I think he feels like the best option here. And I think this is the first one where you could really make an argument for a couple. But look, Alan Page is a Hall of Famer. We saw him win the MVP, one of the very few defensive players to do that. He won in 1971. And he dominated for a long time, like Aaron Donald, defensive tackle, spent most of his career in Minnesota. So I'm going to go with Alan Page.
Fair enough.
You still Googling?
No, I'm good. I don't need to Google the next one.
All right. Yeah, I think this one, there's good names, but I think this one's obvious. 16th overall, we have Jerry Rice. Do I need to keep going or
you do not? I will say though, still Troy Polamalu, Zach Martin, Raymond Claiborne, Javon Curse, pretty good names there. But boy, when you have the greatest wide receiver of all time, kind of ends the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. It still blows my mind that Jerry Rice fell to 16th overall. And what's a fun fact about that draft is that I believe the 49ers actually tried to trade up with the Bengals to get someone else, and the Bengals refused to trade. And so the 49ers got stuck. I use my quote unquote bunny ears with Jerry Rice. The Bengals had the 13th overall pick, and they took Eddie Brown that year. And then, of course, Jerry Rice wins Super Bowl MVP 3 years later in a win over the Bengals. So that one came full circle pretty quickly. All right, 17th overall pick. We have Emmitt Smith. We have Mel Renfro, Gene Upshaw, Steve Hutchinson, and Louis Wright. Who do you got?
I gotta go Emmitt Smith. Again, NFL's all-time leading rusher.
Yeah.
Probably good for something.
I think that does have to count for something. I'm going to agree with you there. I'm not going to battle you. His stats speak for themselves. All right, let's go 18th overall. We got Art Monk, Paul Krause, Frank Kennard, John Henry Johnson, and Marquise Pouncey.
Yeah, I go Art Monk here, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer. That to me, that's relatively easy.
Yeah, it does feel it's crazy how productive he was during his time in Washington, playing with multiple different quarterbacks. I mean, we credit Joe Gibbs for winning a Super Bowl with, I think, 3 different starting quarterbacks, and you had Monk back there just catching passes from all of them, had over 100 receptions in 1984, which is just crazy to think about back in the 80s. So let's go Art Monk. All right, 19th overall, we have Marvin Harrison, Randall McDaniel, Roger Worley, Joey Browner, and Sean Alexander. Ooh.
The answer to me is Marvin Harrison, but let me just give some love to Sean Alexander, who was a beast in Madden 07 when he was the cover athlete, because that was one of my favorite video games of all time. And when he was rocking those old Seattle uniforms before they went, the Russell Wilson neon green ones, he was a beast. So I did like Sean Alexander quite a bit, but to me, I think it's Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, Sean Alexander actually went to high school about 30 miles from where I grew up. So I got to see him play in high school a couple times and see him thrive like he did in the NFL. We saw him win the MVP in 2005 when Seahawks went to the Super Bowl, 3-time Pro Bowler. But I do agree, as much as I love Sean Alexander, I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison. Man, you know what? We might be talking about his son when we have this conversation 15 years from now. But it's hard to argue with what he did in his career. 3-time first-team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, and, of course, won a Super Bowl with the Colts. 20th overall, we got Jack Youngblood. We got Forrest Gregg, Maxie Bond, Steve Atwater, and Bill Brown. Who do you like at 20th overall?
Jack Youngblood, 5-time first-team All-Pro, obviously Hall of Famer, All-70s team. It's probably it. I will say this, though. Fun fact, I almost lean towards Forrest Gregg only because my parents, when I was born, they were down to Tyler and Forrest. Those were the 2 names.
No.
So I could have been Forrest Sullivan. So I might, that's what's pulling me to Forrest Gregg, but I'd probably go Youngblood.
I might have to call you Forrest Sullivan for the rest of this podcast. There's a couple 20th overall picks. My favorite 20th overall pick ever is a guy named Elvis Peacock. I just had to mention that. Mark May was a 20th overall pick. We all know that name. He is now in the media. And what I think one thing about Forrest Gregg, though, that I like, besides the fact that he played in the Ice Bowl, is that he's a former Bengals head coach, and he was their head coach in Super Bowl 16. So even though this is from a playing standpoint, I would give Forrest Gregg my 1B, but I do think Jack Youngblood is the ultimate answer. All right, 21st overall. This is another one that there's some big names, but I feel like we're going to agree. Randy Moss, Lynn Swann, Vince Wilfork, Chandler Jones, and Alex Mack.
To Randy Moss. I think that's, it's similar to Jerry Rice, one of the best, if not, talent-wise, the best to ever do it. His 07 season with New England was insane, but even before that, when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, I forget what the actual statistics were, but it was like 3 catches, 100-something yards, 3 touchdowns. They always put that meme up when a receiver goes off on a weekly basis. The dude was he was an alien. He's an absolute freak and one of the best receivers of all time.
He led the NFL in receiving touchdowns 5 times. Like, that is bonkers.
Yeah.
That is just impressive. All right, we'll go Randy Moss at 22. I absolutely agree there. 22nd overall, we have Andre Rison, Harris Barton, Justin Jefferson. Ooh, that's sneaky. Jack Reynolds or Demaryius Thomas.
Like, what would it take for Justin Jefferson to ultimately be here? Like, obviously he's already in, he's on the list, but how high does he need to go? Like, what else does he need to do? And he's only been in the league for a few years, already established himself as one of the best starts to a career for a wide receiver of all time. But how much longer do we have to go until he gets into that Randy Moss thing where you're just like, yeah, no, of course, it's Justin Jefferson.
I mean, I feel like, let's see, he would have to go at least 8 seasons. I feel like that's kind of
Yeah.
he's only gone 4, and I mean, you can certainly put him in this conversation because he has been so dominant. I mean, you look at he's got over 1,000 yards 4 straight seasons and has been unstoppable. Even though the Vikings won't give him a new contract for some reason. So yeah, I think you could absolutely put Jefferson here if you wanted. Do you want to, is the question.
No, because again, it just feels a little too early for me. Although, I don't know. You be the tiebreaker on this one. I do like Demaryius Thomas, but
yeah, I like Demaryius Thomas. You know who was a 22nd overall pick? I'm not going to put them on my list. William Refrigerator Perry. The fridge, man, the fridge. You know what? I'll go Andre Rison. He had a pretty prolific career. He played for a bunch of teams, won a Super Bowl, 5-time Pro Bowler. But I think Justin Jefferson will ultimately end up being the answer if we have this conversation 3 years from now. All right, 23rd overall. Yes, true. Ty Law, Aussie Newsom. I can't even talk anymore. Bill George, Ray Guy, Bruce Armstrong. Ooh.
This is a good one. This is a really good one. I'm trying not to be a homer here and lean towards Ty Law, even though he's one of my favorite Patriots of all time. Legit shutdown corner. They were changing the rules for him at certain points in his career. He was that good. Spearheaded a lot of the Patriots' early dynasty years. Am I foolish for saying him over Ozzie Newsome?
I don't think you're foolish. I think you could certainly make the argument, and you just did, but I'm going to go Ozzie. I can't argue against a Hall of Famer, all 80s team. And guess what? He's beloved in Cleveland. There are not many people. The Browns fans love. I'm going Ozzie.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine.
I'm sorry. I see your Patriots banners. It makes me feel bad. I'm just saying.
it's quite all right.
All right, 24th overall. What do we got here? We have Aaron Rodgers. We have Ed Reed, Dez Bryant, Calvin Hill, Cameron Jordan. How do you go from a couple of these picks, like 22, where you're, I don't even know who I should pick there, maybe Justin Jefferson, and then you get to 24th overall, and you have a bunch of legends who somehow fell in the draft?
I think all of these teams now should look at this list and then just trade to these selections because clearly this
11,
is
trade to 24.
Why would you? Because this is where all the stars come from. You have to, it's boring to just get the number 1 overall pick. You actually want the number 24 overall pick if you're really galaxy braining this whole thing. I think this is a tough one because, Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, multiple-time MVP, Super Bowl champion, but Ed Reed is that dude. He is one of the best defensive backs in NFL history. You've heard Tom Brady, you've heard Peyton Manning, you've heard all of these guys say that Ed Reed was the toughest guy I've ever had to face on a week in, week out basis. I kind of feel like I lean towards Ed Reed.
Yeah, look, I know that we look at the quarterbacks and we probably rate them a little more strongly because the position they play, they touch the ball all the time. You look at Rodgers, what he has done, 4-time MVP. He won the Super Bowl back in 2010. And he has been absolutely dominant. But, man, you can make the case that Ed Reed was the best at his position in his era. And we've heard Belichick talk a lot about how that was the guy they had to look for when the Patriots offense was on the field. So I'm going to go with my half-point system and give a half point to Ed Reed and a half point to Aaron Rodgers. I'm splitting the vote. All right, 25th overall, Santonio Holmes, John Beeson, Dante Hightower, Stanley Morgan, Ted Washington.
You got 2 guys here who have made iconic moments in the Super Bowl in Santonio Holmes and Dante Hightower. And, obviously you have that catch from Ben Roethlisberger with a few seconds left in that Super Bowl to help Pittsburgh win that game. And then you have Dante Hightower, who had the strip sack of Matt Ryan in that 28-3 comeback. Also sneaky, had the tackle of Marshawn Lynch right before the Malcolm Butler interception. It's one of the more underrated stops, defensive plays in Super Bowl history, in my opinion. The fact that you were able to stop that dude at the goal line, the play before the interception. between the two. Again, I don't want to be a homer, so I don't want to just say Hightower, but I felt like he had more moments in more championship games than Holmes.
I love that every time Tyler has said, I don't want to be a homer,
and then proceeds to be a homer.
Going full homer. Yeah, you know what? I'll agree with you. I do think, obviously Santonio Holmes having that game-winning catch in the Super Bowl from Ben Roethlisberger to beat the Cardinals, and that is a pretty iconic moment. I think that's one of the best throwing catches we've ever seen in the Super Bowl, probably top 5. But when you look at what he actually did, he only had, I think, one season over 1,000 yards, so he never blew you away with his number. So obviously very iconic Super Bowl moment, but I'll go with Hightower. All right, let's get to 26 overall. We have Dave Brown, another Clay Matthews, Alan Faneca, and Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis to me, and I think that's pretty easy.
Yeah, I don't think we have to have a very long conversation about this one. How did Ray Lewis drop to 26th overall? And again, it's one of those things where we just had this conversation at 25 where we're pulling at straws here, talking about Super Bowl performances because these guys aren't Hall of Famers. You get to 26, you have guys like Alan Faneca, Clay Matthews, Ray Lewis. It's just, it's crazy how the draft falls sometimes. All right, 27th overall. Again, this is a good example. Harry, our producer, just assuming our answer here as the resident Dolphins fan, and that's because Dan Marino was taken 27th overall. A couple other names, Roddy White, Devin McCourty, DeAndre Hopkins, and D'Angelo Williams.
I'm going with the Ace Ventura Pet Detective star, Dan Marino.
Man, robbed of an Academy Award, didn't even get nominated.
It's a crime that I'm still not over to this day, similar to Ray Finkel not getting over that kick.
And just don't lock yourself up in Shady Acres Mental Institute, Tyler. That's all I ask. All right, 28th overall. There is no Dan Marino here. We have Mark Ingram, Joe Staley, Darrell Green, Derek Brooks, Trevor Price are a couple of the names. Who do you like?
I mean, I think Joe Staley is someone who it just pops out to me, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think I'm going to go Darrell Green. I like Joe Staley. I think you could easily say it's him, but Hall of Famer, one of the just his speed was unbelievable, running down guys left and right while playing for Washington for his entire career. I mean, we're talking his career spanned from 1983 to 2002. When you were in the NFL for 20 seasons and you're playing defensive back for all 20 of those seasons, to me, that is impressive. We're talking about 7-time Pro Bowler, won 2 Super Bowls in Washington, and their defense was a lot better because of him. So he also finished with 54 career interceptions, which is the 21st most in NFL history. All right, 29th overall. We have Fran Tarkenton, Steve Wisniewski, Nick Mangold, Dave Wilcox, and Harrison Smith.
Totally biased pick here. I interviewed Fran Tarkenton a long time ago, and he was super nice, so I'm going with him.
Yeah, I think that is a fair pick. And you look at Fran, and then you have Harrison Smith, who were both drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. So I think that is interesting. And another interesting fact about Fran Tarkenton is this. When he was drafted 29th overall, Solly, that was in the 3rd round. He was a 3rd round pick.
That's wild.
How the times have changed.
That is insane.
But yeah, he's got an MVP from 1975, 9-time Pro Bowler. So I think Fran Tarkenton is the answer here. All right, 30th overall. We got Sam Huff, TJ Watt, Reggie Wayne, Eric Allen, Keith Bullock.
I don't think it's too early for TJ Watt. I know we've had a couple of these conversations with other guys, but I think TJ Watt is Hall of Fame trajectory, one of the best pass rushers of his generation in a time where, again, it's so much harder to make any sort of impact defensively. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it is fair because you look at the 30th overall picks that have been out there. And again, it blows my mind that he fell to 30th overall to the Steelers. But yeah, I think I agree with you. This is one. We don't have a lot of recent guys that are still active on this list, but we're putting TJ Watt in that Mahomes mold. You are still playing, but you are good enough to be considered the best ever in your draft slot. All right, number 31 overall. Cameron Hayward, Curly Culp, Tommy McDonald, Travis Frederick, Greg Olsen.
Is it too early for Cam Hayward either? I don't think so. I think he's in this conversation easily.
Yeah, I think you could definitely put Cam Hayward in there. I think the other person you'd probably consider is Tommy McDonald. Hall of Famer who played way back in the day, 1957, who was drafted with the Eagles, another third-round pick, taken at 31st overall. So I'll go Tommy McDonald, but I think Cam Hayward is certainly, you could certainly make an argument for him. All right, 32nd overall. We are here, and there's some interesting names. We went through a few were maybe not so interesting. I think this is going to be a battle of the quarterbacks. We have Drew Brees. We have Lamar Jackson. We have Bob St. Clair, Logan Mankins, and Benjamin Watson.
I think it's still as impressive as Lamar Jackson has been, obviously a multiple-time MVP. It's Drew Brees. You know, you're talking about a guy that's won a Super Bowl, has, before Brady broke him, had all the passing records, it felt like. You know, he was as prolific of a passer. Great story, too, going from the Chargers after they were, got Phillip Rivers to the New Orleans Saints, him and Sean Peyton revitalizing that area after Katrina. I love his NFL story, and he's been one of the more prolific guys in that era. So I would go Brees.
Yeah, and you look at Brees, second overall in NFL history in passing yards, passing touchdowns, but 0 MVP awards compared to Lamar Jackson's 2. So I do agree with you. I don't think Lamar's played long enough. What do you think Lamar would have to do, and how long do you think we'll talk about Lamar in this slot 5 years from now? Is that too soon? Or do you think it's going to take his whole career because of how prolific Brees was while he played?
No, I don't think it will take that long. I think if we start to see some playoffs, I mean, if he wins a Super Bowl, obviously that throws him further into the ring. And that's been the big knock on Lamar Jackson right now. He can put up stats. He can be an MVP, regular season quarterback. But when you get to that playoff, and when you get to the playoffs and you have to then elevate to win a Super Bowl, that's kind of been the rub on him. So if all of a sudden he can turn himself into a postseason January quarterback, February, Super Bowl winner, well then okay, the narrative changes. But right now he hasn't, I don't think, reached the ceiling yet, where I feel like Brees did reach his ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny though, because Brees won that Super Bowl in the 2009 season and then just never got back and really struggled in the playoffs. So, yeah, but I do agree the answer here is Drew Brees. Maybe Lamar passes him at some point down the road, but Brees at 32nd overall, all the way back in 2001 when he was the first pick of the second round, because there were only 31 teams because the Texans did not exist yet.